What is going on, guys? Thank you so much for tuning in to yet another episode of the Sports Muse Podcast. I am your host, Kevin Brumley, and I am joined again by my guy, Jimmy Smith. Jimmy, how you doing?
Hey, doing well, man. Thanks for having me.
And Jimmy, last time we talked on the episode, and I said I was going to bet some money, and you said some guys are going to come break my legs for not paying off debts. I actually won $1,700 last card. So
Sweet.
I'm kind of a super genius. Not a big deal. Tell your friends.
Of course.
So we're talking about UFC 252. Great headliner, pretty solid card. It feels like it is a fight fan card with a great name at the top of the card with Stipe versus DC. How do you feel about the card as a whole?
The card as a whole, I think, is very, very good. It's solid all the way through. A lot of names fight fans know. I think they're going to be exciting. A lot of exciting matchups. It's a well put together card, 100%. But the main event is what's got everybody excited. I mean, this is one of those they didn't need to make a great card. I think they could have made a mediocre card, and I think most people would have bought it. But doing it the way they did, which is solid card with a really amazing main event, I think that's the 1-2 punch everybody's looking forward to.
Yeah, I'm definitely excited for this Saturday. And we're going to start at the top of the card. Normally, we work our way up. But let's start right with the top, man. We got DC versus Stipe. The trilogy is happening. You started off. How do you feel?
Well, the way I see this one is I picked Stipe to win the last one, which he did. The two X factors, everybody knows the skill set these guys have. Okay, I mean, DC, of course, an Olympic wrestler. He's got an opportunistic submission game. Does have knockout power, does have finishing ability, likes to strike. Obviously knocked out Stipe the first time they fought. The two X factors that, and who knows how they're going to land, but the two X factors that really get me in this fight are twofold. Number one, DC is very honest, and his coaches are very honest about he doesn't always stick to the game plan. He doesn't always fight the smartest fight. He's been very candid about that. His coach has been like, we're telling you to take him down. And, he wants to stand and bang. His ego gets involved in fights. I thought it got involved in both John Jones fights. I think it definitely got involved in the second Stipe fight where he was ahead. And I thought kind of tried to ice skate uphill and get into a slugfest with Stipe, and it didn't work out, and he got knocked out. So in big fights, a lot of times he lets his emotions get the better of him. Has he taken care of that? Who knows? But he certainly didn't in the last Stipe fight. So unless he's made some huge ground in the last couple of years, it's a tough one. Also, this is supposedly, I never believe fighters when they say they're retiring, but this is supposedly his last fight. With everything he's got in front of him, meaning he's already doing commentary and breakdowns for the UFC and all this stuff, he has plenty of financial opportunities. Does he fight with that same energy and intensity? Stipe fights with a chip on his shoulder every time. He's one of the most, in my opinion, disrespected champions of all time, meaning he's an all-time great. Who do you think the best MMA heavyweight of all time is? It's either Fedor or Stipe. That's it. Those are your two options. You could say DC, should he beat Stipe, although I have some thoughts about that. He's always fought with a chip on his shoulder. He's always been the blue-collar guy who never got a huge push by the promotion. Seems like they were always promoting somebody else, and Stipe would beat him. So he's always had that chip. I think he's going to fight with that chip again. I think the fact that people are talking about DC, should he beat Stipe, being the greatest heavyweight of all time, with all the names Stipe's beaten, with the run he's had, that's got to stab him right in the back. I don't think he can stand that stuff. So I think he goes in very, very, very focused. And the one thing that would ruin the rest of DC's career is something bad happening in the octagon where he's not the same guy anymore. He takes that bad beating, he takes that bad punch, and he's not quite the same. Is he really going to walk through that again? Is he going to want to walk through the fire when this is his last fight? Sure, it does a lot for his legacy, but he's never going to defend the title. Supposedly, obviously, this is all up in the air. But, does someone come into that last fight with the same fire they had when they were in their prime and thought they'd make a career out of it? It's interesting. And those two X factors, just depending on how they fall, they both favor Stipe. Stipe generally doesn't get into kind of the iron-headed kind of brawls. Stipe doesn't think this is going to be his last fight. He's talked about who he wants to fight next, and he wants to keep going and add to his legacy. So those are the two kind of DC X factors that make me lean towards Stipe. We know about the physical differences. We know about the skill set. I think Ben Askren told DC, you can take him down whenever you want. It's not that easy. Stipe was a wrestler in his own right. He's big, he's strong, he's taken on some great wrestlers. Yes, he's the superior wrestler, Cormier is, but it's not a matter of whenever I want it, it's right there. It's not that easy. So is he a powerful striker? Yeah, but so is Stipe. So it's the X factors I'm leaning toward. And to me, the X factors favor Stipe.
And I definitely get what you're saying. I actually almost said exactly what
But you disagree. I love that. I see what you're saying. I speak English. Go ahead.
No, I agree with like the wrestling standpoint is, you know, clearly on paper, whether it's, you know, it doesn't even have to be on paper. DC is the superior wrestler.
Right.
You know, DC's never had, even though the way he looks, it looks like he'd have cardio issues. He's never really had like outstanding cardio issues at all. But you have to wonder with Stipe being a solid wrestler, not DC level, but is it worth, like, if it's going to take him 2 minutes to get him down, is it going to be worth it to expend that energy? And that's one of the things that's going on through my mind because, you know, when he started getting touched up a little bit in that fourth round is I'm surprised he didn't try to clinch up. We know DC's a good clinch fighter. But I'm kind of curious because I do feel like there's two different gas tanks. You know, you have striking gas and then you have grappling gas. You know, DC should be, it's his bread and butter, man. That's what got him to this far, right? His wrestling. So you feel like he should probably know how to conserve energy. There's points where you can rest in that clinch. But I do think DC is a competitor at the highest level. And that's why he's, you know, one of the greatest fighters we've ever seen, right? You know, as far as he's bounced around weight classes, but he's always been the bridesmaid, right? Never the bride, which is tough for him. So I feel like in his head, he goes, you know what? John Jones is better than me. John Jones, not a great human being, but John Jones is one of the, probably, besides the PED stuff, probably the greatest fighter we've ever seen, right? But my problem is I think he is so, like, he wants this so bad, is I think we're going to see the best DC we can for 41 years old. Now, that's my biggest question is, you know, DC's, I think he's training his tail off. I just don't know at DC what his peak is, what his 100% is at 41 years old. Stipe's 38. He'll be 38 next week. He's not a young guy in his own right, but I think he definitely has less miles on his body than DC, you know, from wrestling for a really long time. But I think when I go back and I watch those two fights, you know, the first time I'm not going to, the knockout's not anything to blow me away because I think Stipe took a lot of damage from Ngannou, kind of a quicker turnaround, got clipped, got put out. That's part of the game. But when I go back and watch that second fight, I thought DC looked not like light years ahead, but he looked like the higher level fighter. When they were kind of clinched up a little bit, DC looked like he was just a little bit better. When he was at range, DC looked a little bit better. We know DC's a little bit better at wrestling. To me, it's, you know, DC does get work to the body a little bit. He doesn't have the tightest midsection. And I think that's where it kind of comes down to Stipe come out and just attack the body and try to sap that energy because I think we're going to see something similar. I think DC is going to come out and win the first 2, maybe 3 rounds. But it's those championship rounds that I'm not 100% sure on. I'm going DC because, like I said, I think DC wants this. I think it's the most important thing right now. I get what you're saying. Being half in, half out's always a dangerous thing to try to predict. I just think if it were almost any other fighter in the world, I would completely be like, I'm going to go Stipe. He's a, you know, one of the greatest we've ever seen. But with DC, somebody that's just like crazy competitive, I think this is extremely, extremely important to him.
The issue to me is the fighters he's been most competitive with, that's when he's made mistakes. I agree with you 100%. I think in this case it works against him. I really do. I really thought if he had fought a smarter fight last time, he would have won. I really believe that. I thought if he had fought a smarter fight both times, I'm not saying he beat John Jones. I think, as you said, John Jones is the better fighter. But it was almost like he had a chip on his shoulder, and that competitiveness made him fight the wrong kind of fight. And putting this fight in that category, which I do as well, I do think he wants it. That has led to him making some boneheaded decisions. It's led to him getting in firefights that were not conducive to his style, that didn't work for him, that led to him getting knocked out. He's done that a couple of times. And so it's kind of like you can't have it both ways. Either he's kind of one foot in, 1 foot out, and he's already, he's not going to put everything into it, and he's less likely to make a mistake, but maybe his cardio's not there. Or he's 100% doubled down, I really want this fight, which has led to him having mental problems in previous fights. You know, it's like he just, I got to get a knockout, I got to be decisive, whatever it is that goes through his head, and I don't know what it is. it's been an issue. Yeah, John Jones is better. I do believe that. But I believe in the second fight when DC was winning, something came out of him where he says, dude, I'm going to finish John Jones. I'm going to bury this, and this is going to be mine. And boom, he got knocked out. Against Stipe, when he had rounds and his coach just screaming at him, like you said, clinch, 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 stop this. He couldn't do it. And I don't, in that sense, I don't know which way it's going to fall, but he's had issues with both of them. When he's super motivated, he makes bad decisions. When he's unmotivated, he might not be willing to go through what he needs to go through physically in order to beat Stipe. So that's the issue to me.
I'm kind of curious. I wonder what level DC's at now compared to the second fight, because I do think it's really interesting between rounds 1 and 2. DC was asking his corners both times, am I winning this fight? Am I up? And to me, the only reason you ask that is because you're starting to feel tired and you want to make sure that you have rounds in the back pocket. So I just wonder I just wonder how much less his cardio it was then as it is now. And honestly, I'm really curious to see, and I think you're going to have a really good idea what the fight's going to look like after round 1. Because I think DC did surprisingly well with a guy with a 6-inch disadvantage in the reach. He actually does really well out at range, like at that boxing range, which is surprising. But that second fight was one of the weirdest stand-up fights I've ever seen, because we see like a Nate Diaz, he'll hand fight and try to get that jab over top of that lead hand. But DC was constantly like, they were nose to nose almost, just hand fighting this entire time, and they're both just like rock'em sock'em robots. It was a very strange thing, and I wonder if he's going to do that. Is he going to try to clinch more? Is he going to try to take him down, wear him out? I don't know. That's what I think round 1's going to tell me a lot about this fight.
It might tell you a lot about the long-term strategy. Of the strategy he's going to choose for the next 4 rounds, he'll probably give away in round 1. But it isn't just, does he physically have the cardio? I mean, we have no reason to think he doesn't. Yeah, he's older, but, we haven't seen a drop-off yet. Another thing is, no one was thinking Stipe was going to retire after the first fight. A lot of people thought DC was going to retire after the second fight. A lot. I mean, he was talking about, I don't know if I'm just, a lot of people thought he was going to ride off into the sunset. That's it. 1-1, former heavyweight and light heavyweight champion. He's out of here. And he came back. So it's who's got the better cardio, or will DC's cardio have caught up? Probably. I have no reason to think it's not going to be good, but the mental side, when Stipe lost, it was he couldn't wait to get back in there and beat DC. When DC lost, we thought that might be the end of him. So there's that, when you look at the loss, it's how did it affect each guy mentally? Stipe got right back in and got the knockout. DC almost walked away after his. Sure. And both of them have to get to the same level for this fight. They both have to get to, a really high level to fight one another. Stipe got back there immediately in the second fight. DC, after the second fight, we don't know if he's up there again. That's a big issue.
So to me, I think Stipe is one of the ultimate gamers. I think that's one thing that makes him really fun to watch. Dude, we've never seen anybody take bombs from Francis Ngannou. Stipe took it, and it wasn't the prettiest fight, but he's an absolute dog, and I don't know how else to describe Stipe. He's a fighter's fighter. I do think DC.
Who was promoted going into that fight?
Exactly. No, you're right, man.
And he was pissed. Who was promoted in virtually every fight he has? It's all about the other guy. He's never been the UFC's guy. They've never really gotten behind him, and he just keeps winning. And whatever it is, and DC is very much the UFC's guy.
Sure.
And so there's still that chip on his shoulder that, it's like everybody but me gets the push. Everybody I fight gets the push. He took time off because he's a first responder during COVID, and people are talking about stripping him, and other people are off forever, and it never happened. So he has every reason to feel disrespected, and that's part of the reason he's a gamer, man.
You're absolutely right, and like the UFC would definitely want to use him more as a stepping stone than their guy, their golden boy, which is interesting because I feel like Stipe would be a guy that you would want to promote because he's a firefighter, he's a champion, he's a fun fighter, and that's a whole different can of worms. Why the UFC doesn't really get behind Stipe a little bit more, and you're right, DC is their guy. I'm really curious what's gonna win out. I think this is going to be a really fun fight. And I do think DC came into the second fight after the first one. And I don't know if the first one played a role in his psyche or if he thought this even in the first one. But I think DC thought he was going to walk through Stipe because like he really had his hands down, wasn't respecting Stipe's power. And I think he was looking for that knockout shot. And he's like, if I put a hand on you, I'm going to put you out, which is weird because DC's not like Francis Ngannou. But I wonder how much he kind of went in and didn't dog his training, but wasn't as highly motivated because he thought he was going to get him out in a round or two. I don't know.
It's possible. He certainly fought like he didn't respect Stipe's power, which, once again, it's a weird decision to make, but it's that, at DC's level, you got to think you're going to win. You got to really believe you're going to win 100%. So did he kind of take Stipe lightly? Maybe, or he thought maybe he had Stipe's number. He was the better athlete. And the thing is that he wasn't necessarily wrong. He was doing well up until he got knocked out. It was if you don't respect the power of a guy like Stipe, it's not like his list of victims and the way he's put him out doesn't speak for itself.
Exactly.
And he might fight more respectful this time. But look, just taking Stipe down or focusing on your wrestling, it's just a smarter game plan. Whether you respect his power or not, just you're the superior wrestler, use the weapon that you have that's better, and that's his wrestling. So if he uses it early, I agree with you. If he uses it early, that might be an indication that he's going to be very persistent with it. He's going to be consistent with it. He's not going to give up on it. It's going to be part of the game plan the whole time. He might land a couple punches and go back for the takedown. That's the best strategy for DC. Will he stick to that? That's everything.
That's the question. So you're picking Stipe. How do you think he's going to win?
I would say either late stoppage or decision. I don't see this being a quick fight. Unless DC's, just shot and has been keeping it from everybody, which is possible. If you get old quickly in this game, you do, right? So it's possible that DC's chin is shot after the last fight. Who knows? Unless it's something like that, which I doubt. I think we're talking 4th, 5th round. We'll either get a late stoppage from Stipe or a decision.
I think the fight's going to go to decision. I think. I see DC, a 48-47. I think it's going to be an awesome fight. I'm rooting for DC just because DC seems like the nicest guy. And I feel like during the John Jones thing, people were, for whatever reason, rooting for John Jones, which is just weird because John Jones is a pretty horrible human being. But I can't root against DC. He's just such a nice guy. Not that Stipe is a bad guy. Both guys, great guys. It's going to be an awesome fight. Just happy for whoever does win because, dude, how Stipe absolutely nailed when he beat Fabricio. When he jumps over the cage and is screaming, "I'm world champ." I was like, dude, that would be my reaction. Like, it was so honest and in your face where he was just like jacked out of his mind. Good for that guy. But that brings us to our co-main, which is a great one. And I'll get into why I think it's kind of a surprising one is we have Sugar Sean O'Malley versus Marlon Vera. And the thing that's interesting is the UFC has a horrible habit of taking young guys and throwing them to the fire too soon. They do that all the time. Or like Sage Northcutt, he wins one fight and they're like, have him fight the top guys. And you're like, what are you doing? This isn't a good idea. And they've done that plenty of times in the past. But with O'Malley, I feel like they're really being careful with him. And I feel like they really want O'Malley to succeed. And this isn't an easy fight by any means. But I thought they would give him like one of those top guys, one of those top 5 guys, which might be too much too soon. I feel like this is a great fight for O'Malley. Vera is a very, very good competitor. Kind of reminds me like how he fought Eddie Wineland last time. Right. Vera reminds me of a sharper, younger Eddie Wineland, where it's not like a ton of immediate danger O'Malley's going to be in. But I don't think it's going to be a quick, one-punch quitter that he hit Weiland with. But I think this is a good fight. I'm pretty excited with O'Malley being 25, unbeaten. This is going to be a good one. I feel like you're putting him right below DC Stipe, which people are tuning in for. And I feel like this is really smart strategy by the UFC to try to blossom their star.
How old are you?
I'm 29 years old.
Oh, God, you kid. Now, when did you start watching UFC?
I started watching when I was 13 years old. So I watched when Gary Goodrich dropped the crucifix elbows when I was like 5. But I started really getting into it. Ultimate Fighter 1.
That's the fight you're thinking of.
Yes.
Right.
But yeah, I started watching Ultimate Fighter 1 because Josh Koscheck's from my high school when he was on the first season.
Gotcha. Okay. That gives me a time frame. So, all right, I'm way older than you, and I've been watching UFC a lot longer than you. But here's the deal: the UFC didn't used to be a developmental league. Once you got into the UFC, you're in the UFC. And Frank Trigg, remember Frank Trigg?
Yep.
All right, his first fight in the UFC was?
I don't remember his first fight.
Matt Hughes for the title. There was no warm-up. He fought Matt Hughes for the title. Hayato Sakurai fought Matt Hughes for the title. First fight in the UFC, right? Elvis Sinasek, his first fight in the UFC was Jeremy Horn. His second one was Tito Ortiz. Okay, that was the era I came up in the early, 2099. Dude, you got in the UFC. You were in the UFC. If you won 3 in a row, you got a title shot. There was no 5 in a row. I don't know if this guy's legit. They didn't bring anybody up. They didn't mentor any. If you were there, it's like being in the NFL. You're in the NFL. It's not like we don't put you in, scout games. There are no scout games. All right, we can't. It's you're either playing the Patriots or you're not.
Well,
so,
how much do you think the difference is with social media, with O'Malley having a strong, because the game is different. When someone like Frank Trigg was fighting, that stuff wasn't there was very few quote unquote superstars, if that makes sense.
There are a few differences. First one is there were other big organizations. So when fighters came in, Frank Trigg had big fight experience. He had fought in Pride, he had fought in Shuto. They're all gone. So there's no he was big at Strikeforce. Strikeforce is gone. He was big here. Of course, Eddie Alvarez came from Bellator, but that's extremely rare. So there are no other big leagues for people to go, wow, this guy must be good. He comes to UFC, he's got some juice. Okay, that's gone, right?
Sure.
So the other thing is they have 1 million fighters on contract. They have 1 million shows, and they have to keep all these shows filled. So you need to kind of build people up, because you throw them to the wolves and they're gone. You got to refresh all that talent. It's just too many people going in and out of the organization. So it is a very different era. But I remember a time when probably Sean O'Malley would be fighting a number 1, number 2 guy at this point. If not fighting for a title, he'd be fighting a contender. It's just you didn't get 4 stiffs in a row. It didn't work that way. So in this case, about Marlon Vera specifically, excellent ground game. He's kind of underrated with his submission game.
Sure.
Really solid all the way around. Aggressive. I don't see him mentally falling apart. He doesn't seem particularly – it seems like he's – really wants a piece of Sean O'Malley rather than some kind of star. He doesn't seem to be mentally floored. He's not past his prime. He's young. I think in every way he tests Sean O'Malley. I think Sean O'Malley probably passed the test. So I think he'll take some shots. I think it'll be late. I think he'll land some shots and Vera will be right there. He won't just collapse. Okay. So we're not going to get that one shot walk away knockout. We're not going to get that oh my God, water cooler moment. Probably. It'll probably be a long, difficult, grueling, ugly fight, and Sean O'Malley comes out on top. He's just tactically a very good fighter. So I'm going with Sean O'Malley. I think we will find out if O'Malley can take a shot. We'll find out if he's got gas. We'll find out if he has resilience. We'll find out if he can get out of bad positions. I think we'll see all those things. There isn't anything so far that's made me think, boy, O'Malley's totally lost in this position, right? We haven't seen anything where he's like, oh my God, what's he going to do? So I think it's a stiffer test for all the reasons you mentioned, and I think he passes. We realize that he's going to have to work for some fights. We realize he's going to have to work for some positions. He's not going to blow everybody out of the water, and he probably wins a decision. That's my pick on this one.
And I completely 100% agree with you. I think this is a great test where, if he loses this, it's not going to be an embarrassing fashion where you're like, oh, he's toast. What I mean? How are we going to promote this guy who just got KO'd in 10 seconds, which would make the UFC's job a little bit harder. But I think Vera is the type of guy to completely test him. With O'Malley being a pretty thin, long guy, in that ground kind of stuff, can Vera work a takedown? Can he work his ground game? And I think we're going to see that kind of stuff, which is good, because then we really get a solid idea. Because if O'Malley stepped in there against somebody like a Marlon Moraes, I would imagine Moraes would, just have his way until he gassed or he didn't put him out, because I don't know enough about O'Malley. O'Malley knocking out Eddie Wineland was like, oh, that was nice. That was good for him, but I don't know enough
a lot of questions.
Exactly.
Right. Still a lot of questions. But make no mistake, if Marlon Vera wins this fight, there will be plenty of fans writing O'Malley's obituary. That's what they do.
Sure.
I mean,
it's MMA.
It's just MMA. It's like, oh, this bum, or like, what was UFC doing putting him with this guy? It's like, okay, I heard all about Shabazian versus Brunson. Okay, dude's 22. He got knocked out. Big deal. He'll come back and be fine. But people are just, there are articles on Shirt about, oh my God, they're mismanaging their talent. It's like, okay, slow your roll. He lost a fight. It's not the end of the world.
Sure.
And, so it is big, and that it doesn't matter how or whether it's dramatic or not, fans will be throwing the guy in the garbage can. A lot of them, if he loses this fight, which I think is completely unfair.
Well, you get a lot of people that are like boxing people, so they're used to like 1 or 2 losses being like, he's done, throw him
No,
away. And
MMA
it's like,
fans are just brutal, dude. MMA fans are just brutal. They're just a brutal fan base, and you just got to deal with it if you're gonna be in this sport. But it's ridiculous. I've seen, like, I don't know, I haven't even reputable, but, like, MMA journalists being like, "Oh,
sure,
UFC is mismanaging their," and it's like, dude, I lost one damn fight. Okay, big
sure.
deal. It's not the end of the world. So I think that's a sport, just one of those things you have to deal with.
Sure. I'd agree with that. And which brings us to our next fight, which is JDS versus Rosenstroke. This is a fun one. And generally speaking, like, heavyweight's kind of, it's very top heavy, with like your Stipe, DC, Nagano, Curtis Blades, and then there's like the next
Everybody
tier.
else.
Yeah.
Yeah, after that's everybody. The top 4 are almost like locked in.
Yeah.
You say Stipe, all right, one of those guys is number 1. We're going to find out. Ngannou is the clear number 3. Blades is the clear number 4.
Yep.
Ngannou lost to Blades lost to Ngannou. Ngannou lost to Stipe. Like, they're kind of locked. Like, there's nowhere to go. And then, like, everybody else is the rest of the division.
But I think that next tier, you have a Derek Lewis, a Rosenstroke. JDS is probably kind of on his way out of it. Overeem's probably on his way out of it. But those guys that are really good tests for younger guys coming up. So this one's interesting because I don't know how you feel. I am not the biggest Rosenstroke fan. I think he's talented. I think he has some stupid power, which a lot of heavyweights do. But he's got some incredible power. He literally almost blew Alistair Overeem's lip off his face with one punch. Insane power. But at that same time, and I get that JDS isn't the same type of fighter that Alistair Overeem that we've seen over the past handful of years, because Overeem recreated himself. His chin started to deteriorate, and then he started becoming a really big in-and-out fighter. Instead of the bully Ubereem, he's more of kind of trying to teep kick, keep you away, in and out, those kinds of things. That's not normally how JDS fights, but the recent pictures of JDS, him being shredded, a little bit lighter, I'm kind of curious if he is going to try to be a little bit more athletic in his stand-up instead of just sitting down 1, 2 over the top, clipping somebody. I'm kind of curious if he'll try to kind of go with that Overeem path, because Overeem has laid out the blueprint of how to beat somebody like Rosenstroke. I don't know if he'll get that done. I don't know, which makes this interesting.
It makes it very interesting. The issue to me, and the reason I'm going with Rosenstrike, is JDS has a tendency that helped him when he was younger, which is he has these loopy long punches that seem to get around the guard. He's surprisingly quick. He can throw big, long punches pretty fast. And he was really good at keeping range. So he had a long reach, long arms, and he kept guys at a distance and would throw these almost, if you remember, like an Igor Vovchanchyn, these like weird hooks that you have your hands up and they'd get over anyway. And they'd hit you, and how the hell did that happen? And he had so much power, you could make it work. The problem is, as he's gotten older, those weird timing punches get harder to throw. They get harder to land. You find yourself opening yourself up more because you're throwing these big punches. You don't have the speed you used to. And while you're looping that big punch, the short one comes in. In their primes, I'd probably go with JDS on this one. I don't think JDS is in that prime anymore, and we've seen how his style inherently is a little bit dangerous. But much like Chuck Liddell, he once had the speed to kind of pull it off. He had this weird kind of style where guys would kind of run into his punches. But much like Liddell or Vovchanchyn, these guys with this kind of awkward style, once it goes, you don't have like the crispest defense in the world. You're not used to having your hands right here. You're not used to throwing tight combinations. This loopy stuff can lead to big problems. And against a guy with the power of Rosenstrike, I think he catches up to him in this fight. I think Rosenstrike catches him probably in the first couple rounds.
I could definitely see that. I think I'm more so just rooting for JDS. I'm just not a huge fan of Rosenstroke. I don't know, like nothing against him. I feel like his skill set, if he was at a different weight class, it wouldn't be good. He survives and he's decent because he's in heavyweight, but I feel like as far as his skill gap, it's it's much how like a younger Derek Lewis is. Derek Lewis is getting a little bit better now as far as rounding out his game, where he actually has a little bit of cardio. But I feel like Rosenstroke's kind of still in that infant stage.
Yeah.
So that brings us, well, we had a fight canceled because of COVID. So this will be the last fight we talk about. This should be an interesting one.
Yes.
It is John Dodson versus Marab.
You can do it.
Dvalishvili.
Dvalishvili. It's like the D and the V are together. Dvalishvili. Dvalishvili.
So we're going to call him Marab.
Good deal, Marab.
So Marab versus Dodson. How you feeling about this one?
This is a really interesting one. And by the way, if you've ever studied Russian history, which my degree's in history, and I had to study Russian history, Georgian names are like that. He's from Georgia. They're all these long tongue twisters. Or Shanakidze Drugashvili, which was Joseph Stalin's real name. He's Georgian. So you always get these like long tongue twisters stuff. Anyway, so the thing about Dvalishvili is he should be on a 5-fight win streak. He's on a 4-fight win streak. Remember the Ricky Simone fight where he was out after the bell and they called Ricky Simone the winner, which no one has ever been able to effectively explain to me that you could be declared the winner after the fight's over. But anyways, he should be on a 5-fight win streak, whatever. All of them decisions. The issue for me and why I'm picking John Dodson to win this fight is if you look at his last fight against Gustavo Lopez, he had trouble with the boxing. I mean, he was off balance a lot. He got knocked down a lot. He was throwing these wide punches. Sometimes they landed, but other times he was almost like on one foot with this weird stuff. And what happened was he would carry that into a takedown a lot of time. And once he was on top, it was over. I mean, he had way better ground and pound. His passes were much more effective, but it was almost like he looked lost at boxing range, would somehow get it to the ground and took the fight over. I don't think he's going to have that out against John Dodson. Remember, John Dodson's never been finished. He's fought some outstanding fighters, has never showed any real issues with the takedown in terms of his defense, and he's a short-range puncher. So I think Dvalishvili, generally speaking, at this point in his career, should be past a guy like John Dodson, but Dodson just, I think, stylistically is good at the things that have made Dvalishvili look bad. Short inside boxing. He's had trouble with the speed. He's relied on the takedown. That's not easy to get on John Dodson. John Dodson is no scrub on the ground. He's not going to just take him out and have his way with him. And Dodson's more experienced. He's been in there with better fighters, and he hasn't always come out on top, but he's not going to mentally fold having somebody hit him with some ground and pound and pass his guard and all that stuff. Look at his losses. He's 2-3 in his last 5 fights, but Peter Yan, Jimmy Rivera, Marlon Moraes, all by decision, wasn't blown away by any of those guys, and they're the best of the best. So it's not as though we've seen him go off that cliff or anything like that. He's small for the division. But in this case, I think that quick inside pop, him getting inside, blah, 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 throwing good combinations, Dvalishvili had trouble with that against Gustavo Lopez, who's not a great boxer. And it seemed like the hand speed was a bit of a problem for him. Dodson has more of that. I'm going with Dodson, maybe a little upset.
I'm completely with you. So when you look at John Dodson, one, his hair looks horrible. So you're like, dude, John Dodson might be like 45 years old or something like that because it's like long, kind of afro, balding in the front. But
whatever, bro.
Hey,
don't let the hair fool you, dude. Come on, bro. Don't let the hair fool you, okay?
So Dodson's 5-5 over his last 10, and you're like, oh, he's starting to slip. Like you said, Peter Yan, Rivera, Marlon Moraes, John Lineker, and Mighty Mouse. I mean, Rivera's the worst fighter out of all of it, and Rivera's so good.
Rivera's solid. He's a solid dude, yeah. And not finished by any of those guys.
No.
Right? They were all decisions. A lot of them were super competitive, very close against Marlon Moraes, So, yeah, the numbers, I think, are deceiving in this one.
Yeah. Exactly. And, I completely agree. Like, that's exactly what I was saying. I think that Dodson's strengths go exactly perfectly with Marab's weaknesses. This seems like a fight that's almost guaranteed to go to decision, even though Dodson had a late finish in his last fight. This just feels like one of those fights. I think Marab's outlet is, and like you said, he's the stronger guy. Like he's just physically strong for the weight class. Not that he's just stronger than Dodson. He's a strong guy, and he's really good on top. But Dodson's, one of the best we've seen in recent history off of getting back off the mat. If you do get him down, he's right back up. Do you really want to mat return him 20 times? Because that's probably what it's going to take for him to win this. That's why I'm going with Dodson. And I was looking up the odds last night because, like I said, I'm a gambling man. And Dodson by decision is 5-1 odds.
You're kidding me.
I'm not kidding.
Wow.
Yeah, I was like,
take that.
I was
All
like,
day. Yeah.
putting some money down.
All day. That's a great side bet.
So no, I'm going with Dodson, but this should be a fun one. I'm not sure whether they're going to kick the card off. They're going to bump Jim Miller up, which Jim Miller's always a scrapper. Should be a fun one, but I'm excited for this card. I can't wait for it. So thank you again, Jimmy, for coming on. How about you kick over some of those 20,000 subscribers my way? Help me out, brother.
I'll do everything I can for you, brother. Appreciate it. Check out my YouTube channel, Jimmy Smith MMA. Check me out on Twitter, same thing. And appreciate you guys.
Thank you so much. We'll see you guys next time.